What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we're checking out another critical drinker video, and this video is titled TV Kinda Sucks Now, but not for the reasons you think. Let's check it out.
Perusing the internet the other day in search of stuff to laugh at, when naturally I happened upon an update for Season 3 of Rings of Power, which is apparently shooting over here in the UK and is likely to last until the end of the year. And because shows like this need about another decade of post-production, that means we're unlikely to see a third season until at least 2027, 3 entire years since the previous season.
Oh no, What happened?
Damn man, wars have been fought and won in that time. And it's not alone in this either. The final season of Stranger Things comes out in November, 3 years since the last episode aired. Last of Us Season 2 came out 2 full years after the previous season, and for the handful of people excited for Season 3, well, you're gonna have to wait until 2027 for that, boyo.
Oh shucks.
And all of this stuff got me to thinking, man, TV kinda sucks now.
Yeah, you know what? I'm very tired of waiting super long to watch my show again. And in a way, I think that streaming services being able to produce really like high-end, high-quality stuff is good. But at the same time, the massive negative is to produce these super high-quality stuff takes more time to do. So yes, that stuff's coming, but it's going to take longer to actually get it. So therefore, is it actually better if it's that much of a hindrance on you being able to enjoy the show? I don't know. What I can tell you is Rings of Power, I gave up on. That was really bad. There's like one good scene out of the entire first season. I didn't even watch the second season. I actually didn't even know the second season was even out. And then apparently the third season is being made. Nah, not for me. If you like it, that's great. Not for me at all. Stranger Things, though, I am interested in. Definitely want to check it out. And I didn't watch The Last of Us, but I might check that out one day when that show's like finished. But right now, I am still into Stranger Things. But yes, it's taking way too long to be made. I know it's finally coming out at the end of the year, but this Stranger Things in particular is probably the best example of taking way too long to do a show. You could also make an argument for the House of Dragon. They should have been doing those every year. But when it comes to Stranger Things, the length it takes to get through these seasons is crazy. These kids are now like, it's only supposed to be like 4 years have passed, but these kids are like 10 years older than they were from when the show started, which is crazy.
Not so much in the content department, although I could definitely make an argument about that. But the whole shooting structure and business model is completely ass backwards now. Gone are the days when you'd get a new season of your favourite show every year, so you could always feel excited and invested in it. And I mean an actual season of 20 or even 24 episodes, not the 8-episode mini-series, or 5 in some cases, that are laughably pretending to be TV seasons nowadays. Gone are the days of episodic storytelling where each new week brought a new adventure or some interesting new self-contained storyline where writers were encouraged to experiment and take chances and try wildly creative new ideas. Now everything has got to be serialized, everything has to be in service of one big overarching storyline, and at a certain point, well, it gets pretty fucking boring, man. And not just that,
True.
It gets exhausting. Like you can't afford to miss a single episode or you'll have no idea what's going on. It becomes like homework, something that you constantly have to stay updated on. And how can I put this? It's just not very entertaining anymore. But more than that, it creates a lot of problems that I don't think studios fully appreciate. So why not talk about them right here and now? The first big problem is a loss of momentum. A full 22 episode season of TV with a weekly release schedule would last almost half the year, meaning that there might only be a 6-month gap between the end of one season and the start of the next. This was really important because it meant that the show was never really out of public consciousness. Just as the conversation about the last season was dying down, the hype train for the next season would start to build up again. It was good because it kept the fan base engaged and enthused, and it meant that people always had a good sense of where the show was at and what was happening. Now imagine the difference when you have to wait 2 or even 3 years between seasons. You don't need me to tell you that a whole lot of stuff can happen in that time, especially now because, let's be honest, we live in a world of constant distractions. There's a million other shows, movies, games, books, news reports about the impending collapse of society, and highly sexy but slightly intoxicated YouTubers from Scotland, all vying for our very limited time and attention.
So here's my thought process on that. I think that studios, a big issue is that for a long time shows do like the pilot episode and then it gets greenlit for an entire show, and then they like run the hurry up to get the show ready to go. Where what they do now is they will do one season, and they put so much production time and energy into that first season, they have to get it approved to eventually get a second one after it's aired, and then they start working on the second season. Where maybe the smarter route might be to actually, like, when they're done with the first season, right away just start with a second season. And so I know studios might pay more in that perspective, but they're gonna get a second season anyways if the show is good. So it's one of those things where it's like, at least what you can do with a season 1, you can produce it and have season 2 halfway done by the time season 1 is like streaming. And so the idea being like, at least that's streaming, so even if, let's say, it doesn't do good numbers, the studio can cancel season 2, and then the writers can write an end to the season 2 at least. So at least that gets done. That's the idea. So money doesn't really get wasted, the story gets finished, and that's just that. So it's not just like, hey, here's all of this production money into season 1. Oh, people like it? Okay, well, in another 3 years, we'll have the next season. Like, no, that's just not working. And I think it's time for not only just streaming services to change the way they do things, but also when it comes to like letting seasons breathe. Like, you can't just have one season and cancel the show regardless of how good or bad it does. A lot of shows don't get good until they're in like their 3rd or 4th season. So it's one of those things like you got to have that build up. And when it comes to Netflix especially, I noticed Netflix has a lot of trash, but they will occasionally have a solid first season of something and then they'll just cancel it. Or they will give a season 2 and then just cancel it. And they don't let those characters in that story arcs, and they don't let it breathe and go and do its own thing. And that's unfortunate. And I think another reason why studios do this is because they still have season 1 on the streaming service too, right? So the idea is that if it takes longer to watch season 2, they want you to rewatch season 1 to get ready for season 2. So from that perspective, I get it. But from like an actual like he mentioned all the reasons he gave, but also the idea that like people are excited to catch back up with their characters every year. Now that you changed it to where it's every 2 or 3 years before you get caught up, you know, that does kind of burn a show out. And I could see the hype really dying down. I don't know. I mean, look at Game of Thrones back in the day. That was doing every year. The Walking Dead, 2 of the biggest shows, Breaking Bad, some of the biggest shows ever made were ones that were releasing every year. And a lot of those shows were before streaming, so you had to just catch them on cable. So I don't know. Maybe it is just the streaming culture kind of ruined it, or it was the studios trying to take advantage of the streaming culture. I don't know. It is what it is.
Fan bases, fickle and terminally online as they are, can just as easily drift away to other shows and IPs during that 3-year gap, or just lose interest entirely because they've forgotten what your show is even about. And even if they do somehow stick around until your next season, you then have to waste precious time reminding them about everything that's happened up until now, because it's been so long since the last season happened that half your audience has forgotten what's even going on now. Take House of the Dragon, for example. That was a pretty good show, right? Yeah, arguably it's a bit fucking slow and ponderous at times, and it could probably use a few less miserable people standing around in badly lit castles looking at maps, but overall it's well written, well acted and well produced, and a nice little comeback after the disaster of Game of Thrones. The problem is that 2-year gap between seasons absolutely killed its momentum, which is why the audience declined more than 20% from seasons 1 to 2.
You serious?
And
Well, let's not forget, season 1 was actually really good and crafted well, and season 2 wasn't. You know, that's also a big reason for why House of Dragon really showed its weakness, was because, I mean, this is a good point too, but also the quality wise, House of Dragon season 1 had really good quality. It was kind of return to form of the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones, and season 2, while it had good moments, mostly kind of felt like season 6 of Game of Thrones, which was still decent, but like one of those things where you can kind of see where, all right, now we're getting to season 7, oh, season 8, oh no, you know, so you can kind of see that like the descending feel. So now the idea is like, why would I watch season 6 or the new season 6 when I know the next season might be a season 7 or season 8, which of course House of the Dragon season 3 is supposed to be coming out soon. But like I said, if season 2 was rough, season 3 might be worse. So I get why some people might be afraid to jump in or to stick with it because they've been burned before. You know what I'm saying? You can only get burned so many times before you stop playing with fire. So, you know, like I said with all this stuff, just my opinion.
Season 3 at least another year away, what do you think that's going to do for the show's ratings? Another problem that's beginning to rear its ugly head, especially with younger actors, is aging. Kids grow up fast, especially if you happen to cast them when they're like 11 or 12 years old. I mean, take Stranger Things for example, and compare the actors from season 1 to what they look like now. They're still supposed to be playing this plucky band of young teenagers, but they all look about 30 years old now, and at a certain point it just gets fucking weird. Then you also realise it's been almost a decade since the show premiered, and in that time they've made a grand total of 5 seasons, one of which isn't even out yet. Now imagine if they'd been able to release a season every year. They could have had the whole thing wrapped up by 2021, and they wouldn't be facing the uncomfortable prospect of having to keep using actors like Millie Bobby Brown, who now look like middle-aged cocktail waitresses from Vegas. Although I have to admit, it does kind of make me laugh when shows run into the exact opposite problem sometimes, like The Last of Us, who cast a child-sized Bella Ramsey to play a young Ellie, probably assuming she'd grow up and age noticeably between seasons to account for the 5-year time jump, only to discover that she still looked like a fucking 10-year-old when it was time to start shooting again. Boy, did you guys gamble and lose on that one. The other thing I really miss about TV today is episodic storytelling. Not knowing what kind of wacky, creative, thought-provoking, or downright weird adventure my favourite characters would get caught up in this week. It brought in a much-needed sense of variety and unpredictability to TV shows where you felt like almost anything could happen instead of just grinding forward with the same storyline you've been following for years. It also gave the writers a chance to branch out sometimes, take a few creative risks and try stuff that was just a little bit different. Yeah, the gamble didn't always pay off, usually when they allowed one of the lead actors to write and direct an episode, something they were absolutely not qualified to do, and you could definitely tell when the writers had run out of ideas and just slapped together a bunch of flashbacks instead, but that was part of the charm of the whole thing. Sometimes it didn't work out, but most of the time it did, and if not, well, you had about 22 other episodes to choose from that season. And yeah, I know Alex Kurtzman's idiotic idea of modern Star Trek is still trying to do episodic storytelling, but let's be honest, no one cares about that because nobody watches that fucking garbage now. Obviously, I'm not saying that every show's got to be like that, and I totally get that certain settings or IPs don't lend themselves to episodic storytelling, but I feel like we've swung so far towards serialized storytelling that nobody even does it anymore. Everything now has to be about pushing one grand narrative forward, one painful step at a time, with multi-year gaps in between. The last thing I'm getting pretty sick of is studios turning movie scripts into TV series without bothering to ask if there's even enough material for it.
Yes, this one 100%. 100%. Kenobi TV show and the Book of Boba Fett should have been movies if you're gonna do those, especially what was the other one? I mean, the Obi-Wan one for sure, you could tell that was a movie. The Boba Fett one felt like it was a concept that they turned into a show. It was a concept for a movie they turned into a show, where the Kenobi one was like they had that thing written. Like they had that movie script written and then they turned it into a TV show and ruined it. And it's unfortunate because there's some really good moments in both of those shows, but it really just, it hurt it for sure.
Marvel and Star Wars are especially guilty of this shit, where you can tell they had the story outlined for a 2-hour theatrical movie and instead stretched it out into a 6-episode miniseries instead, without really knowing how they were going to fill in all that extra time. What you end up with is either painful time-killing filler episodes where nobody accomplishes much of anything, or characters who get caught up in tedious busy work just to give them something to do. It's so fucking lazy and unnecessary, and it results in a flabby, inefficient show that nobody's excited about. I guess what I'm saying with this long rambling rant is that more and more now I find myself checking out of TV shows these days. I just don't have the time, the emotional investment, or the sheer mental energy to get through 10-hour serialized narratives like that anymore. Season 2 of Peacemaker might turn out to be the single greatest thing ever to grace our TV screens, but I'll probably never know about it because I just can't be arsed watching it now. House of the Dragon Season 3 will probably be another season of solid, well-crafted but slightly stodgy fantasy TV, but by the time it eventually comes out, I honestly don't know if I give enough of a shit to watch it. The final season of Stranger Things could see the world's most shot out group of teenagers finally bring their decade-long story to a close, but after so long, do I even care how it all ends? I don't know, man, and I suspect a lot of other people are starting to feel the same way. One thing's for sure though, the current model of TV just isn't working anymore. Something's got to change, and if I'm right, it has to change sooner rather than later. Anyway, that's all I've got for today.
Go away now. Okay, so what I have to say to all that is I agree with pretty much everything he said. I think the biggest issue I have with TV shows, out of all the stuff he said, was when something that was supposed to be a movie gets turned into a show because money. Or because streaming service. Especially when it comes to, like, the Marvel movies. Because every time like a big Marvel movie comes out, I like to rewatch all of them and binge them like the couple weeks before the movie actually comes out. And now, in order to get the full story, to really get everything, the real meat and potatoes, you know, obviously there's some fat here and there, but to get the real meat and potatoes, you have to watch every single one of them. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't want to re-binge watch shows. The only show I binge watch is The Office, and I think we all do that, so you can't really get mad at me for that. But I'm not going to rewatch the Loki show, and to be fair, that is like the best one out of all of the shows that Marvel did. But it's one of those things like, I'm not rewatching the Loki show, I'm definitely not going to rewatch the other ones. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that should have been a movie about Bucky and Sam and like the fallout of the whole SHIELD thing and John Walker coming into power. That should have been its own movie. That was just a complete fail. That was supposed to be a movie, and when Disney Plus came out, they spread it out into 6 episodes, and it ruined it. There are some elements that are good, but overall, it's a bad show, right? And the majority of stuff that's made now is just bad. And it's so weird to be thinking like that, because I remember when streaming really started taking off, and you know, Disney Plus was coming out, and a lot of these shows started their productions, and the idea of, man, I'm going to have Star Wars shows and Marvel shows. I'm going to be eating good. Remember how we all felt that way? And now we're looking at it and we're like, maybe we didn't want all of that. Okay, here's a good question for you. Let's look at it 2 different ways. So one way is it the studio's fault for us wanting something and them not delivering? Or is it our faults for wanting more and not liking what we're given? Or is it both? Let me know in the comments below. What do you guys think? Do you agree with the drinker? Do you not? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn notifications for more videos, and even check out any more of my videos. They're right here on the screen. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one. Peace.